Aloha, everyone. Thank you for joining me on ThinkTech Hawaii. I am Chanda Park, your host for Money Talks. In celebration of Women's History Month, I have Rayann Echavez back on the show to talk about women and wealth. Welcome back, Rayann.
Hi, Shonda. Thank you so much for having me again. Always good to be here.
Yes, always good to have you. I'm always so happy when you are on the show as a guest and just, you're the wealth of knowledge that you have. So thank you for being back on to share. And we're going to talk about some specific challenges that women financially have. And you're going to share some solutions as well, correct?
Yes, that's right. I really love this topic, especially, as two women discussing, with each other. I think we definitely can relate to the information.
Yes, definitely. So let's start off with the first slide and talk about some of the financial challenges.
Sure. So last time, Shonda, you and I discussed very briefly about women are unpaid caregivers. So today I wanted to dive deeper into that. And so when we talk about women being unpaid caregivers, we talked about some examples of childbirth, right? We women tend to take a lot of time off for childbirth, sometimes to take care of their parents or other family relatives, and sometimes even to take care of their spouses. And so when you see the slide here, it talks about lower income or lost income and employer benefits. Last time I gave a statistic on, exactly how much wages are lost, which is about, just in total, $522 billion in unpaid caregiving are lost every single year. But 75% of that are women. And so we see that this as a huge challenge for women when it comes to financial planning, because it can really impact them in the long term. And also because because of the lost income, a lot of times it's also associated with lost employer benefits, retirement benefits, possibly even lower social security benefits. And
Yeah,
so,
the whole
you know,
package.
it's a big deal. And, sometimes, of course, childbirth is a wonderful time. However, the reason why we want to have this discussion is because we want women to be aware that there's some extra planning that we have to do and take into consideration when we're taking a few years off of work.
Mhm.
So not only are we facing those challenges of lost wages and benefits, but a lot of times when we go back to work, we're still looking for um, like flexible schedules. And sometimes it's difficult to go back to the career that we left um, because maybe we lost some of the skills. We're not so up to date. And in addition, our schedules have to be flexible because we have to drop off the kids, pick up the kids. And then, of course, that is potentially a loss in career advancements. And again, it does affect our salary as well. And we also see that when women are in that position, they have a higher, what we call economic vulnerability in the event that they're, in the event of a divorce or they lose their spouse. So
Mhm.
a lot of things to really take into consideration.
Yes, so many things affect a women's earnings.
Yes, and in fact, let's show a quick example of what a Social Security benefits would look like in comparison to maybe someone who has no gap in um, their work, right? So this example on the screen here, this is someone. So I in our organization, we do what's called a social security analysis. And this is just a quick rundown of maybe someone working an average salary of $30,000 to $50,000 a year. And so you can see that when we say total benefit, no gap, that just means that that's someone maybe working for 35 years, an average of $30,000 to $50,000 of earnings, and this is what they can expect to get with their Social Security benefits.
If they
Um,
didn't take any breaks.
if they didn't take any breaks. So, how Social Security works is that they would calculate 35 years of your earnings. And so, what a lot of people don't realize that any gap, right? If you have any zero income in those 35 years, it really impacts your benefits. So you see the bottom example with gap. So, this is an example of, let's say someone took off maybe 5 years to take care of their children, right? Because most women, maybe they'll take 5 to 6 years off because, at that age, children are ready to go to school, right? That's kindergarten age. And so maybe they take a few years off there, and then maybe sometime in the future they take another few years off to take care of family obligations. Or in this particular example, we actually ran someone not working during the pandemic years, so maybe like 2 to 3 years off. And so you can see here, Chanda, that's a significant difference, right? So if you are claiming at age 62, we're looking at a over $400 difference in benefits. And so that's already significant monthly. But when we look at the total lifetime income, that's really what we want to look at. That is several hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And what a lot of people don't realize is Social Security is that this is, especially today, this is one of the incomes that actually is a lifetime income. And we actually should look at it as another retirement bucket because, people will look at, okay, how much do I have saved in my IRA or in my 401k? And they look at, how much they've saved up. But if you really think about how many in your lifetime, how much income you would receive in Social Security, that's why we say, especially for women, they have to make the right choice as far as when they're going to claim, because that can make a difference of several $100,000, especially if they've had a gap in their career. And also if they're married, even more so, they have to make, the right claiming decision because, we talked about divorce or loss of spouse, that in the future, that also means loss of Social Security benefits. So you want to make sure that you're maxing out the most that you can get from, the benefits that you're entitled to.
Right. Maximizing the benefits and just going over, right? That's why there's registered Social Security analysts like yourself that you're able to help people and, not just women, but men as well, married couples, to be able to see how they can maximize their benefits, right? So that they can get the most out of it versus not knowing and claiming and taking early.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Chanda. And I think part of this is, again, the education part and really having awareness that these are the situations that we may come across. It's not, just as simple as, okay, I wait till age 62 or my full retirement age to start claiming benefits. So a lot of things to really take into consideration, and even more specifically for women.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And I know that there's way more financial challenges that you wanted to go over.
Yes. So let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So here, let's talk about, let's say women don't take off of for childcare or, to take care of parents, right? Let's just assume that, when there are other women who, they're working and they're working all their entire career. However, some of the disadvantages that we still see is that women are earning less. Okay. So if we look at the next slide, this is a great example of, even they took a poll of what the median savings are for men and women. And you can see it's a huge difference, right? So
it's a huge difference.
And it's all across generations. And so we know that the reason this is happening is because women earn less, even though last time we discussed that they're better educated, we hold, more graduate and undergraduate degrees. Even so, we're still earning less. So that means that we have to save a lot more. We have to make an even greater effort to save into our nest egg, because as you can see, this is a median. Median means exactly half, right, of women have this balance in their account in these generations, and exactly half have more than that. So, it's pretty shocking. The disparity between, and it's consistent against, in all generations. Yeah.
It is consistent.
Yeah, you can see, right? It doesn't matter their generation, and we know exactly why. And so, again, definitely a lot more planning needs to be done for women. And then, not to mention, last time we talked about how another challenge that we have is women live a lot longer.
Yeah,
So,
we need to plan.
yeah, so I right now, if we look at the slide here, we can see that women live, or actually, I'm not sure if it's on the slide, but on average, women live at least 5 years or more, right? So can you imagine, Shonda, when you're so again, most people retire at age 65, right? Or that's the quote unquote retirement age.
Right.
For women, so if we're retiring at age 65 or so, that means we have to plan for another 20 plus years. And it's only expected that the life expectancy is going to continue to increase. So, what
Mhm.
if now we're talking about not only 20 years, but 30 years, maybe possibly even 40 years, right? Of financial resources that we have to make sure that we have. And so, if you look at the slide, um, oh, and then, we didn't, um, let's touch up on this really briefly because on the previous slides we talked about economic vulnerability, right? And so one of the things that we see is that as the women age, their marital status changes, especially over at age 65 and older. We see that men tend to stay married, and women, tend to they either become widowed, divorce, or stay single.
Hmm.
So, we see that this can really impact someone's finances. Okay. And so if you look at, the next slide, we can see just some statistics of how women are impacted by a divorce because, you see here on the left side, it says 50% of custodial mothers' pre divorce income can be lost. 50%. That's huge. That's half of
Yeah.
income, right?
Mhm.
Which makes sense. Of course, there's now only one income in the family,
Right.
um, and then which 29% now live in poverty after divorce. So it can really impact a woman, and more so, we're seeing now what they call gray divorces. Have you ever heard of gray divorces before, Shonda?
Yes, only because I was listening to your presentation about women a couple days ago.
So it's interesting, they
That was
actually
the first time I heard it was from you.
so yeah, they actually have a term for it, right? So gray divorces are women who divorce, or people who get divorced that are age 50 and older. And so
Mhm.
as we can see here on the slide that um they spouses that go through a gray divorce, not only they are more depressed, right, but they also experience their poverty rate, okay, for women specifically, is 9 times higher than
Wow.
a married couple. And
Mhm.
we're actually seeing this type of divorce on the rise. And so, of course, you go to the middle and we see that it's just you don't just visually you can see that a married household, of course, will have a lot more wealth than someone who is widowed
Yeah.
or end up in divorce. So we can see that those are um it's just it happens, right? And so we just have to be aware of the financial impacts that and challenges that you know that happen when you go through something like a divorce or you losing your spouse.
Yeah. I mean, especially like you said, the gray divorces, right? When it happens at a later age, a lot of times the woman is at the age of retirement or just other changes versus it happening in your 20s or 30s, right? Where you have your whole lifetime still ahead of you with your career.
Yeah, and that's really key right there with what you said, Shonda, because, the great divorces, that's 50 and older, right? So, that's pre-retirement or in retirement. And as we know, when in retirement, or where we don't have the same income as when we're working. And so you can really see why the poverty rate when someone gets divorced at that age is so significant, because or divorce, or even they lose their spouse at that age, because we're already dealing with most of the times a reduction in our income, and then a lot of times a reduction in other benefits as well, such as Social Security, or even the fact that when it comes to planning, and sometimes women will lose their spouse's pension also. So those are the things that we want people to really think about as they're planning their finances, which a lot of times that planning really needs to happen now. Of course, we hope that people stay married. However, we do know that divorce happens.
Yes.
And also we know that life is not always certain. We don't know when God will call us home. And so financially, we see that it's a huge impact on people, but more specifically for women, because we tend to live a lot longer.
Yes. And if our income is reducing significantly, it doesn't stop other things from increasing, such as the cost of healthcare.
Yeah, let's talk about that one, because that's a huge one. And so I always say that, I don't mind living a really long time, as long as like I'm exactly how I am now. But we know that that's not exactly. So we know that's just wishful thinking. And so a lot of times, we're living longer today, yet we're not necessarily healthier. So some of the challenges that we're seeing, again, you see on this slide, we briefly talked about it. We're going to expect to need financial resources after retirement for another 20 or 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. That's number one. The second one, which is the next slide, we see because we live longer, now we see healthcare challenges, right? So we really have to take into consideration healthcare expenses in the future, because, like a lot of people think, okay, when I retire, I won't have a mortgage. My kids will be grown up. Maybe my expenses won't be as high as maybe when I was working or when the kids were younger, or when I had a lot of liabilities like mortgage. However, what we don't think about sometimes, and which can be a huge variable, is healthcare. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we're seeing, like on this slide, it says surviving spouse may have to cope with depleted savings. That's a huge one. Not again something that we think about, because because women live longer now, and a lot of times, before our spouses pass, we're dealing with some health challenges or expenses that a lot of times can, deplete the savings and their assets. And so, what about us? What do we have in place as a plan? And we also see that women are likely to they have a higher chance of needing long-term care. And so you can see here the average cost of a nursing home is in Hawaii is over $12,000, right? And this is just for a semi-private room. So you got to be roommates. So maybe we can be roommates, Chanda, to save some money. Right? So
is a private room about double that?
It's a few $1,000s more, but it really depends too, because
that is high.
It is very high. Like in Hawaii, right? We like to be number one in a lot of things, and cost unfortunately is a lot of times up there. And so
cost too.
Yeah. And, and of course, long-term care services can vary. We talked about that in other shows as well, where it can range depending on the service. But that particular amount is for a nursing home, a semi-private nursing home. So it can be, it may be less for long-term care, other types of long-term care services, or it could be more if you need more, skilled. You need to be in a skilled nursing facility. And again, this is today's dollars. Okay, so can you imagine, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So it will require a significant amount of financial resources.
So, what are some tips that you have for women?
So we definitely want to give women some action steps, right?
Yeah.
So, some of the things that, really quickly before we get to that, another part that I just want to briefly touch on is estate planning. This is really important, especially for women, because again, because we live longer, a lot of times we have to be we have the last word for the final disposition of assets. So that falls into our responsibility. Also, women are the 84% are custodial parents are women. So we need to make sure that if we have any minor children, that we take care of our estate planning as soon as possible. Okay, because I think a lot of people think estate planning is if you have, a lot of money or you're wealthy. However, really every single person has an estate plan. If you have children, that means that you need to do your estate plan so you can assign your guardians to take care of your children. If you have savings accounts, you have retirement accounts, you have own a home, especially you need estate planning. But for women, we see that even more so, estate planning needs to be done as soon as possible. And if we look at the next slide, today we are seeing more and more women that are business owners. So they have to make sure that they have a succession plan, because a lot of times, people think estate planning is specifically, it is distribution of asset, but it really encompasses everything financially. So if you're a business owner, you want to make sure that you have your estate plan in place. And today, there are more women who own professional careers, like doctors, lawyers, realtors, and so they really need asset protection. Okay, and that's also part of estate planning too. And then at the next slide, you can see another reason.
More and more blended families in the last decades.
Yeah, and I'm part of a blended family, and we're seeing this so common. However, when it comes to financial and emotional issues for blended families, is so much more complex. And so that's why, again, women need more estate planning. And of course, because women today are becoming more and more wealthier. Last show, we talked about how the great wealth transfer, women will inherit 2 generations of wealth, okay, over the next several years. So that's another reason why it's so important. Okay, and of course, action steps, right? So let's go over what we can do, okay? Because I always say there's hope. We start with the wellness first, right? For me, what we talk about, Chanda, it's really great opportunities for women. We may have some of these challenges, but I think if
there's always solutions to challenges, right?
There's always solutions to challenges, and it can really be an exciting opportunity for women. So after awareness and and we want to encourage people to continue their education. So if you see the slide, some of the action steps that we recommend is number 1, get financially educated. Right. So, look, everything that we talked about today, continue to further your education in finance, just in general, right? So we do offer financial workshops. At the very end of the show, we'll put up our contact information so you can call Chanda or myself to get more information on these financial workshops that really discuss all the topics about finances. Start to build your financial foundation. This is so critical, right? We really need to take a holistic approach when it comes to our finances, and especially women. Now that we know that these are some of the challenges that we may encounter, even more so, we need to have our financial foundation in place and a strategy. We have to have our personal financial strategy. And if you haven't yet, really sit down with someone to do your needs analysis. Those are the things that we can provide for people. Because it could just mean that maybe they also need to increase their cash flow. Maybe they need to get out of debt. Or maybe, they need to review their current assets, right? And continue to work on accumulating their assets. Retirement planning. I always think retirement planning should happen as early as possible. right? Yeah,
With the information I have now, if I had it back then, I really would have started in the kindergarten.
yes. And, honestly, that's why I always tell, your daughter, Shayna, who is in her early 20s, I always say, you're so lucky because you're financially educated, right? At her age, it's so critical for the information because it really starts as soon as possible. And the earlier, the better.
Yeah, and I'm excited for her because I already see such a difference in her age and what her future is going to look like versus mine. Getting the information late. However, this is for everyone because always the best time to start is now.
Yes, yes, I agree. Now is the time. And then, so again, if you haven't, maybe one of the things that I definitely highly recommend is to do your analysis for Social Security because, a lot of everything else that we talked about, like retirement planning, building your financial foundation, accumulating your assets, Social Security plays such a huge role in that. And so I highly encourage people to get their analysis completed because then when you run through your analysis you can see you have a better idea of how you're going to make decisions on everything else. So it's so
Compare it
critical.
to medical history or a dental history. And that's how you're able to see what your dental health is like or what your medical health is like. We need to see what our financial health is like. And this is just like filling out, like, again, a medical or dental history form to see where you're at and where you want to go, right? You can't diagnose someone without doing a medical history and running tests and then, prescribing something, right, for that particular problem. So it's the same thing.
Absolutely, you're 100% right because the truth is I know we talked a lot about the what women may experience. However, the truth is every single one of us have unique situations, and it's always best to look into to take that approach of, well, let me look at my particular situation and see, some of the areas that I may need to work on. And so that's why I always encourage to do your Social Security analysis because it plays such a huge role. And if it's one of the few things that we actually have as lifetime income, especially today when most people don't have a pension anymore. And so it's one of the few sources that we have that, can continue to pay us benefits for life.
Yes. I want to thank you again, Rayann, for being on. And if you want more information, you can contact Rayann directly. She can help you with financial education and going from zero to millions. So I want to thank you again, Rayann. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And we will see you on the next episode. Mahalo.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.